Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the In the Bullseye Podcast. I'm voice of the Bulls, Paul Peck, with University at Buffalo Vice President and Director of Athletics, Mark Alnutt. We come to you from the Media Center here in the newly named Broadview Arena.
How about that, Paul?
Look at that.
Right behind us, the co-branded press backdrop. You got to love it. And thank you for saying Broadview Arena.
Yeah, so that's obviously that's the big news that you have been involved in, that we're going to start our conversation. The naming rights deal with the credit union company from upstate New York, Broadview. So this is going to become the Broadview Arena, and across the street going to become Broadview Stadium. Take me through how this all came about. I know you've been working on it for a long time, and what it all means.
And there's also another piece of property, Broadview Village, which is that space in between the arena and the stadium, where it's just right now, I call it a forest of dead trees, where that's going to be cleared out, and that's going to be a nice green space, and also a tailgating area, for obviously football and other events. So we're very excited. Timeline on this, it actually started before COVID, when we were just looking at opportunities as a campus. We've been very familiar in the sponsorship space here in athletics, here particularly at UB, but just in the collegiate world itself. I mean, athletics is really the driver of bringing those corporate sponsorships to a campus. And so from a leadership standpoint, we just talked about opportunities for campus-wide type of partnerships, and what would that look like, and obviously put some parameters around that. After COVID, I did a valuation for with an entity out there. The company's name is Navigate, just to put a value to two key assets that we have here in athletics. Again, Broadview Arena and Broadview Stadium. See, how about that? How about that?
You have already got it down. Were they always going to be together? Are they always going to have the same name together?
We did a valuation on both properties, and really from that initial evaluation, it came back about $750,000 to maybe $1 million max annually for names. So at that point in time, to your point, we had the opportunity, is this something that we can put out together, or is this something that, hey, maybe we sell one to one entity and the other to another entity? But as we started moving forward and looking at opportunities to partner with somebody, we started this conversation with Broadview about 18 months ago. They were already an existing partner of ours, and we had a relationship that was very good, and we wanted to take it to the next step. And even at the time, the next step was producing a co-branded debit card, okay, where we would have the bull logo on the debit card and maybe Victor on the credit card, whatever the case might be. But even having conversations then, they wanted to go larger than that. Well, at the same time, I was able to move forward and have an RFP to be able to secure a sales agency. In this case, Van Wagner, as you saw in the release. They were going to be our partner, and at that time, we were able to work with them and, again, kind of see what the interest is out here in the market. But we quickly came back to Broadview, and we were able to put a proposal in front of them, which the initial meeting was November, and really wasn't a full vetted out proposal. It was just more so talking holistically about what this partnership would look like. November 2024. Mm-hmm. Fast forward a little bit, going to late February of 2025, we go down to Broadview, and we propose an opportunity which included both facilities. And for them, they coalesced the idea of both facilities, and as I just mentioned, as we started talking about this Broadview Village concept, which I really credit Van Wagner for being able to put something together that encompasses both, properties there, but then also the real estate, which is going to be Broadview Village, and then also a partnership that included the Alumni Association, that included student life, which made sense for them. And so they then came back in March from that meeting, and they had their counter proposal. And from that, it just went the negotiation phase, and then as you move forward through getting everybody involved, which is obviously all of campus, facilities from a signage standpoint, making sure that the alumni was they're fine with that. When I say alumni association, their board, this deal went through our foundation, so making sure the foundation board, everything is fine. We had to mine our P's and Q's and dot our I's and cross our T's with SUNY, always at the end of the day, the 11th hour. So we were able to land in a very good spot, with Broadview and being able to put this together. How I see it, first and foremost is, now we have a sustained revenue source for the next 15 years. And even when you see the value of that, we put in the press conference, it is the highest in the Mid-American Conference, but it's also one of the highest in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And even from a group of six standpoint, as you might call it, I mean, it is up there. And it rivals, even some P4 type of institutions that are out there. So when you look at the dollars itself, it comes to about 15 years, over $31 million, which is significant. But part of that, too, is, their commitment to the university from, number one, a scholarship standpoint. So $1.5 million of that is going to the General Scholarship Fund, which benefits, all of our students. And then also, the CEO, he always reference, Broadview as a nonprofit disguised as a bank. So they always want to be out in the community and partner with various initiatives, food insecurities, what have you. And, for them, something that resonated with them was, setting up an emergency fund for students. So $50,000 a year for 15 years is going to our general student emergency fund, which is phenomenal. And then when you carve out that 2.25 million, then the rest is, obviously coming to athletics. And then, obviously you have your portion with Alumni Association, because now they're going to be a partner with the Alumni Association, be able to, again, get in front of our alumni. They're also going to work with, various entities on campus. And when I say entities, I'm talking about, student life, being able to get in front of students, various tabling opportunities, and especially when it comes to enrollment and admissions, when it's like accepted student day, orientation, move in, whatever case, might be. So there's going to be a presence, a heavy presence with them, which we're excited about. But then also, too, I'm encouraged, like, once this gets going, the one thing that we really didn't go into too much detail, we didn't want to put any numbers out there, but it can also be significant, is there is a variable revenue piece, based on membership. And what I mean by that, Paul Peck and myself, we walk over to the Broadview branch that's over in the Commons there, and like, hey, you know what, let's open up an account. And by the way, instead of getting a generic, Visa debit card, whatever, I want that bullhead.
Yeah.
I want to co-brand
Rock
it.
Victory Bull
Yes,
at
I
all
want
your purchases.
Co-brand it, UB Bullhead on my debit card. So there's also a piece of that revenue that the university will receive as well. So again, it's a partnership that is definitely transformative, for us in regards to, being able to, partner with an entity that is, they have a foothold, obviously, in upstate New York and Albany, and they're migrating west, Syracuse, Rochester. Their goal is to open plenty of branches here in Western New York, and for them to announce their arrival in Western New York, it made sense for them to partner with our brand as well, which we're excited about.
Is this an example of how your industry, college athletics, has changed, where you are looking for other revenue opportunities beyond the normal ones over the years? Is this the most public example of that?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you have to be creative in terms of just trying to find revenue that's out there. And, this naming rights route that we went down was one that, again, as I mentioned before, is now a sustained source of revenue for athletics and also the university. We're also in a state of just more commercialization as well. And what I mean by that is, a couple years ago, the NCAA approved field logos that, again, is an opportunity for businesses out there that want to advertise, in our venues, on the field or on the court. There's an opportunity, whether it's people who are here in venue watching the game or people who are tuning in, live on whatever linear opportunity there might be, or they're tuning in on ESPN Plus, listen to your voice, give them all the great action there. So, and then the next piece of this is, jersey patches. I mean, we see that in the professional sport world, and it's coming to collegiate athletics, where, we can put a corporation, right here on the shoulder, or on the chest, so to speak. So you can imagine a basketball game, they always do the close-up on someone who's shooting a free throw or whatever the case might be. So, their logo is going to be front and center. So there are those opportunities out there, rather than the traditional, hey, we're going to, cultivate, a relationship, and it's going to take some time, and we're going to understand.
I feel like an ad in the program is what pops into my head
or
about
ad in the program,
right?
what have you, or just a sign, whatever the case is, or just even just your traditional philanthropy where you do that cultivation of a relationship, and then obviously then eventually you solicit for a gift. So we have to be creative in terms of what we do outside of just the normal channels of fundraising or just the normal channels of what a particular asset might be from a sponsorship standpoint. And something like this, is definitely something that makes an impact.
All right. Well, congratulations. I know it's a very significant thing that obviously, as you said, you've been working on for a long time, and having it done now means we all have a lot of time to shift our brains from what we've been calling these buildings for a long time to remember that it's now Broadview Stadium and Broadview Arena.
That
right?
is correct.
Right.
That is
and then
correct.
always write it down. That's the broadcaster trick: is you write it down in front of you so you don't have to think about it.
And
too
you'll
much.
see. And again, to your point about you don't have to think about it. I mean, as we go through the next year, there's going to be signage that's going to be popping up, and there's going to be some temporary signage that we're going to put up. Then it's going to be replaced by some nicer, maybe some replaced, maybe some supplemented by some nicer like backlit permanent signage on these buildings. So, again, when you come up to our facilities, I mean, shame on you if you don't know the name of the building, but you'll know as soon as you're walking in that it's Broadview Arena or Broadview Stadium.
All right, well, there you go. All right, well, speaking of Broadview Arena, the teams that call it home in the winter have mostly wrapped up their schedule. I want you to reflect a little bit on men's basketball, women's basketball. Wrestling hosted the MAC championships a couple of weeks ago, swimming and diving. Give me your thoughts as you sort of look back on what the seasons were like for all the winter sports.
Well, I'm going to go out of order a little bit. Swimming and diving. The Mid-American Conference should just name the diving coach of the year the Russ Decker Award. He's won it 6 years in a row, just in terms of how he coaches our divers, and they constantly score high in that event. We have a young team, and I know we'll continue to rebuild that, but just kind of proud of their effort. A little shorthanded there, which is going to be a consistent theme as we talk about as it went through the season. But for them to land where they are, it was a good spot. And then obviously with Russ and what he's doing from a diving standpoint is phenomenal. Wrestling, we hosted Mid-American Conference.
It was great in here. It was an amazing atmosphere.
First time, I know we hosted a while back prior to me being here.
2013, I believe
something
it was.
like that.
Yes.
But for me to be a part of it, I was a fan. I was up in the stands, and there was a nice hospitality room, so I was sneaking in there, grabbing a slice of pizza or whatever the case might be. But following along with our guys, and we have one that's going to
Caleb Burgess.
Yeah, Caleb Burgess is going at 157, I believe.
That is correct.
That's going
this weekend in Cleveland.
Yes, that's going to the Nationals. But the feedback that we received from our patrons that were there, from the visiting coaches, even from the Mid-American Conference, officials, they loved having it here.
Right.
Matter of fact, I can't tell you how many times people told me, like, you guys should have it every year.
Yeah,
I was like,
that's
know
great.
what? Maybe there's an opportunity, but as long as the Mid-American Conference doesn't send like one of our basketball teams, the women, to Northern Illinois, then to UMass.
Right.
We can't
to free the building up.
We can't have that.
It was controlled mayhem. At times,
Yes.
you had 4 matches going on at one point,
my gosh.
but it was fun, and you had people cheering, and you're like, "What are they cheering about? Oh, they're looking there. They're looking here. Wait, they got to start cheering about this one." It was a lot of fun, and it just felt big time. And I credit you and the staff for making that happen.
And that's what I was going to say next is just kudos to our staff and all the time put in to make it a first-class experience, not just for our student athletes who are competing, but also for the fans who are there as well. So Caleb and Coach Vincent, they're off to Cleveland, and wish them the best there. And obviously, congratulations anytime you have someone make nationals. Women's basketball, Coach Sharkey's first year. Obviously not the year anyone expected, but first year, a lot of growing pains. Again, when we talk about being shorthanded. Shorthanded the year, but the thing that really I was so appreciative of that team is you had a core of student athletes there that were bought in and fought to the very end. That senior night or senior day game was special.
Yes, it was.
They beat a Toledo team that went to the finals in the Mid-American Conference, and they played hard. So as we look at year 2, it's just kind of build upon the nucleus of student athletes that you have coming back, and then obviously has a very good signing class that is going to be coming here this summer. And then the key to all this is really identifying and bringing in the right kids from the portal as well. So I have full confidence in Coach Sharkey, and I told her that and her staff that job that they're doing, and look to see some definite improvement, next year there. Men's basketball, really proud of just the growth there. Men's basketball from 4 wins to 9 wins to 17 wins. Could have been more. Everyone's always the coulda, shoulda, woulda. But, when you see that progression, when you see, again, just a group of kids like women's basketball who were, like, bought in. And you can tell they brought the energy all the time. They competed at a high level day in, game out. Maybe they lost a couple near the end late, but every game was competitive. They were right in there. They were shorthanded. We were down to
injuries changed the season.
Key players as well. But again, I'm not using that as excuse because it wasn't about the 2 that were out. It was about the the 6 or 7 that rotated in there that competed. And you had a chance to upset Akron in Mid-American Conference play in the quarterfinals, and they played to the bitter end. So when you look at that sport, same thing as women's basketball. The determination of who's coming back, and then be able to surround those folks with people that are going to come out of the portal. And I believe we have one commitment that's a high school guard as well that's coming in. So again, very, very confident in regards to where we are as a program and what the next steps might be in basketball.
Basketball teams here are finished, but college basketball in Buffalo is not finished this coming weekend as we record this. We've got the NCAAs in town, which is always a big event. What does that mean for college athletics and just for you as an athletic director here at UB to know that you've got one of those spots where everybody's going to be watching this weekend?
Well, yeah, that's a good thing. First of all, the teams that are coming.
Great teams.
Michigan State. Louisville, Brian Hopkins bringing
South Florida, yeah, St. Louis,
back
which
St. Louis. What's his name? Kareem
Abdul-Jabbar, Robbie Avila.
Yeah. I mean, so you have some good teams, and you have some good personalities that are coming here, which I'm excited about. I think for us it's run by Niagara and Canisius, through the MAAC. They're the ones that really host this, along with the folks in Buffalo down at the Key Bank Center. But the thing that I appreciate is you have these schools. 5 of the 8 reached out to us about coming here for practice or shoot around, which we're trying to work through their schedules to be able to get them here. I know several of the ADs, and Josh Brooks, who's the AD at Georgia, who's also vice chair of the football oversight committee. They're coming up, so
you better take care of him.
Reached out to him and said, hey, if you need a restaurant recommendation or a good wing spot, let me know. So again, it's those relationships that are here, and just it's just a good thing for Buffalo. It really is, because you're going to have that place packed both Thursday and Saturday for the games. There's going to be people going down there for the open practices tomorrow, which is exciting and really puts a spotlight on Buffalo. And I know the folks who are running that event, very similar to the Mid-American Conference Wrestling Championships, they're going to put their best foot forward to make sure it's an incredible experience for everybody.
All right, spring sports is underway, and I felt like as I was driving in here, it was the ultimate sign of the challenge of spring sports, which is someone in the maintenance staff was snow plowing the outfield of the softball stadium as I drove in here today.
Even better, Paul. I heard that you played 18 on.
No.
On Monday.
I like golf. I don't love golf.
Yeah, I thought you were out there playing golf on
Sunday.
Sunday.
I was trimming the hedges at the Peck Estate on Sunday and then snow blowing the driveway today. Is that not the most Buffalo 3 days you could ever imagine? Softball, track and field, and tennis all already underway.
They're all underway. Men's and women's tennis are off to an incredible start. Men are undefeated right now in Mid-American Conference play. Women are undefeated in Mid-American Conference play. Both are coming off championship seasons last year. Exciting matches that are happening over the Miller Tennis Center. I get over there when I can, including this past weekend when the men knocked off Toledo, which came down to, the last match and the last set, a 3-set, winner for us, where we lost that first set and were able to come back and win it.
I'm guessing Lee Nickel was like in the parking lot because he can't watch those.
Yeah, he was. He was all over the place. But again, they're a joy to watch, and it's fast-paced, absolutely exciting. So, again, there's still plenty of conference left to play there, and we'll see where we're at. We are hosting, again, we talk about hosting championships. We are hosting the men's tennis championship here later in late April, which is again gives us opportunity for that home court advantage, so to speak, and like I mentioned before, be able to put our best foot forward for the teams that are coming here, and also their fans are going to be traveling with them as well. So they're off to start track and field. I just walked by them. They're about to practice. They're headed down to Richmond this weekend for their outdoor season. It's actually their second meet in the outdoor season, so they're gearing up for the spring. And then when you look at softball, really excited and proud to see what Chelsea Plimpton is doing. This is a former Western New York great here pitcher for Williamsville South, and we were able to recruit her from taking a year off from coaching and come here to be an assistant coach last year, and then now she took over the reins for a head coach, and they have a few wins under the belt, and the team can hit. We can say that right now. They can hit. They'll put up a lot of runs, and they'll make games exciting. So it's been a long time since we've been to the Mid-American Conference Championship, and I think this year, if they keep playing how they're playing and being able to solve some other issues, I think they'll be in the mix, which I'm excited to see.
All right, Pete Lembo's football team doesn't have to worry about the weather because he has the benefit of the Murchie Family Fieldhouse to start spring football practice next week. And I think I'm excited to get out there, and I'm excited to talk to Pete. But I think the overriding theme is the roster turnover. A lot of the familiar names are no longer here, and it's going to be a lot of young players that are going to get their chances. Has that been a little bit of the conversations you've had with Pete?
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, again, this is a topic that we're gonna hit on, but it is just critically important. Just the era that we're in collegiate athletics, and it's not changing anytime soon. But you mentioned roster retainment and roster recruitment. Obviously, this naming rights deal, it gives us those resources to support our student athletes and to be able to continue the efforts of roster recruitment and roster retainment. I mean, that's critically important in this space as we continue to find even creative ways and other ways to be able to provide, for our coaches, so they can be able to build that roster and build a roster that's going to compete for championships. So again, when you say that, yes, I was at one of their off-season workouts, and it was handed one of those laminated, two-sided rosters, and I was like, yeah, there's a lot of new names.
Yes, there are.
There's a lot of new names, but obviously, I trust the process. I trust their evaluation process in terms of how they were able to plug some guys in that have left for various reasons, and this next 5 weeks when they start next Wednesday is just an opportunity for them after having such a period of them working together in the off season, getting bigger, stronger, faster, to really now focus on the football skill side and gel together as a team. Because part of that, and I know we'll talk about football oversight, is this year you just had that one portal window, and it was a 15-day portal window in January, which it was hectic in terms of bringing in visits and trying to secure your roster. But unlike years past, is now your roster is set, so you can have that additional focus on getting a team to mesh together, to gel together. You can have that extra time to get in the weight room. You can have that spring practice and be done with spring ball, and then, hey, know what we need to work on, know who's coming back. There's no question marks now. So, when you look at it from that side of things, it's a good place that we're in.
The big football news as it relates to the Mid-American Conference that you were involved in is a new member of the league on the football side, and that's Sacramento State. That was announced about a month ago. The Hornets coming in as a football-only member. Again, on the surface, your initial reaction is the Mid-American Conference now has a team on the West Coast, but that's irrelevant in the world that we're living in now. What went into the decision? What went into the discussions amongst your athletic directors to decide that adding Sac State was the right move?
Well, I think a couple things. I go back to, hey, what's some creative ways to find revenue? We all saw the news that was out there. We all saw how much they're paying to get in. But then also, too, was about fit and aligning, that school's values is very comparable to a lot of our schools in the Mid-American Conference. And even though it's not Mid-America, per se. It is a school that's going to fit, right in and going to be able to compete, for us, and I believe make our league stronger. And again, even look at the history of the Mid American Conference. Say, wow, that's never happened. Well, you also look at a school like Central Florida, who was in the Mid American Conference. I want to say for maybe 2-3 years or whatever the case.
In the 2000s,
yes,
if I believe,
early 2000s, and look, what they've been able to achieve since. So I think this is definitely an opportunity that's going to make our league stronger. It's an opportunity in regards to what they're paying in and what they're not choosing to receive from the conference. It's going to make each institutional have a little financial opportunity there. Whoever travels there don't have to worry about the procurement of a plane or paying for that plane. That's going to be on Sacramento State. So excited about that opportunity, excited for something different. I have family in the Bay Area. They already reached out to me. They're asking me, are you guys playing? We're coming.
Yeah.
If you guys are coming,
so the schedule's going to come out in the next couple of weeks, but at this point it doesn't look like Sac State's on the schedule this year?
Sac State is not on the schedule this year. We've all received the opponents, but it's been canned until the schedule does come out, which I'm hopeful here, a few days, week max after this airs publicly. But again, when we talk about this and look at this, and we just kind of look at just the overall space we're in, especially with football at the FBS level, we're not alone when it comes to conferences expanding four time zones. So we welcome Sac State and look forward to the competition whenever they land on our schedule. All
right, that'll be fun. And then we'll wrap it up on football as we always like to do. You've already addressed your role and leadership role in the football oversight committee. There's always 5 or 6 things that you are dealing with at any one time. When I always ask you about it, what are the major issues right now that are being talked about nationally as it relates to football schedules and everything else?
Yeah, I think when you look at just the overall calendar of football, and when I talk about calendar, you look at from a playing calendar standpoint, from a practice calendar standpoint, then also from a recruiting calendar standpoint. So we're slowly but surely piecing that together. We talked earlier about, right now we feel very good where the transfer portal window is. We might even look at shrinking it, 5 days if at all possible. Just the data shows that over 90% of all entries into the portal are that first 5 days of when it's open. But I think as we move forward, I mean, the one thing that we've also taken over now is the Football Rules Committee now reports up to us. So there's going to be some rules in place. So one that people have talked about and going to take notice, when it's approved, is the targeting rule.
It's going to change.
It's the same targeting rule. So again, that rule's in place. It's not going away. It's a learned behavior now, and we're seeing less of them. But the one thing that the change is going to happen is that if it does occur in the second half of a game, you're not sitting out for the first half of the next game.
Right.
So it doesn't carry over. But now, again, there will be a penalty if, that same student athlete has a second one, or even a third one, which we never gotten to a third one. I think maybe one time we've had 2 where they will have to sit out a game. So that's the one piece there. There's always this discussion about, you're seeing more and more guys wear "quote unquote" the biker shorts out there. We're gonna pull those things down.
There's fashion-related discussions.
Pull
is that what you're telling me?
Down. So we're
supposed to look like real football pants now.
Look like the NFL. So we'll see where we land on that. But a couple things as we move to the future, which is going to be very important. So right now the schedule is based on the actual calendar itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these past 2 years we have had 14 weeks to play 12 games. These next 4 years, just based on the calendar and how it fits, it's only 13 weeks to play 12 games, which in some cases, even when we're dealing with the schedule with now Sac State coming in kind of late and making it back a odd team schedule, that makes it very difficult to be able to schedule within that time frame. The one decision that we made is, we're going to do away with week 0 waivers, right? We're going to do away with week 0 waivers, and the one move that we're hoping to finalize and be able to get it started in 2027 is just a standard starting week for FBS. So essentially,
do you envision it being what people have used week 0 as, which is that mid to late August?
Not even that. Essentially, what we're looking at is just standardizing the 14 weeks to play 12 games.
Gotcha.
So, like, the next 4 years was 13 week. Hey, we're going to give you next year, because we also see it too. Like, the times when there's already a 14 weeks season and you do a week 0, so now you have 15 weeks to play 12 games. Do you really need the essentially add up to 2 buys? You know, in some cases 3 buys in terms of how that might look. So, if there is a standard week 1 moving forward, which would be technically a week 0 in the next 4 years, you know, there's a good chance of that happening, which is going to give a little bit of relief, but then also give some creativity in terms of, like, what does that week now, this new week 1 look like? You know, do you have like a Mid-American Conference kickoff game where it's nothing but Mid-American Conference games?
That'd be great.
You know? Do you have, and speaking of that, do you get creative with that and maybe
cross conferences, maybe
if cross-country games,
if non-conference games become harder, more of a challenge.
So anyway, I think that's going to free up, you know, a lot. And then, you know, you also hear about the opportunity as we talk more about the practice schedule of, you know, let's look at this OTA concept as well. You know, can we be able to insert some of those into the summer and just preparation for the season? And at the same token, do we really need the 31 days of fall camp? Can we reduce that somewhat, because now we have those extra opportunities in the summer? So we're looking at everything, you know, holistically. You know, there's always this talk about, well, gosh, if the national championship game was on January 1st and then the portal opened up after that, I mean, that's going to solve a lot of – yes. Would that solve a lot of the issues? Of course it would. But also at the same token, you know, those contracts are out there. There's TV and everything. There's certain dates that, you know, you can't move some of these bowl games off of January 1st. So that's not realistic at this point in time. So what is realistic is being able to, hey, let's look at the front end of the schedule, be able to, you know, put something together that makes sense, and then, you know, we'll address the back end at the appropriate time.
By mid-August, we're all ready for football to get started.
Anyway,
so I'm saying by then, those 2 weeks, like from mid-August until Labor Day, you're like, let's go, let's get it going. So I'm excited to hear that you may solve that problem by having everybody's season, not just a handful of teams. So, well, as always, thank you for this broad view of UB Athletics. See what I did there?
That's outstanding, Paul. Outstanding.
No, thank you as always for checking in on a lot of topics. Most importantly, the new naming rights with Broadview from here at the Broadview Arena. I'm just going to keep saying it till I don't have to think about it and it comes out wrong anymore. So we're going to keep hammering that as it should be. Good. Congratulations on that, getting that deal done. Enjoy the NCAAs and enjoy a little bit of time off before we check in with you again.
Good. Sounds good. Thanks, Paul.
That is Mark Alnutt. He is the Vice President and Director of Athletics here at the University of Buffalo, and we thank him for joining us on this edition of the In the Bullseye Podcast.